Today I'm camping out inside of yellow Colt. I got all my instruments of destruction here. I got my 18 volt cordless DeWalt with a wire wheel on it, angle grinder. I got another air angle grinder with the sanding discs and a air cutoff wheel as well as a electric die grinder. My goal here today is to clean up all of the messed up welds on this thing because there's a lot of high spots in it and stuff that'll make spreading the seam sealer kind of difficult. I'm going to look for weak spots that I can reinforce and go back and tack another weld over and seal up all the holes if in any of the places where I burned through. And then we're going to get to seam sealing. We've got to do this on the top and the bottom sides. Make sure I keep all of this stuff waterproof or else it's going to rust and just decay and corrode away.
Really, it just looks like I'm doing more of the same, and I apologize for that. Some parts of the job are tedious and time-consuming. Many people would have edited this part out because it makes them look like they got it right the first time if they do. I'm not one of those people. I'm humble enough to show the extra work involved and where my shortcomings lie. I'm not the greatest welder, but that's why they make grinders. Steel is a very forgiving material to work with for newbies because prep work, tools, and materials are simple and inexpensive. If you added too much steel, you can grind it off, and if you cut too much off, you can put it back. Making it pretty is a whole nother ball game if you're working with materials as thin as these. It's very easy to burn through thin stuff, and especially at the edges. I found myself chasing the puddle around in a few places when I welded the first pass. My goal here was never to make this perfect, but just to fill all the visible holes with metal prior to relying on the seam sealer. Sometimes I get a little aggressive grinding and make more work for myself. Like I said, steel is forgiving, and I'm willing to work on this for as long as it takes. I had a couple of pinholes on this side, a grinding mistake, and another spot where I burned completely through. In the dark with a light behind it, it's much easier to see what needs to be filled. I'm going to build up the welds on both sides of the seam to ensure there's enough meat holding it together and to be strong and watertight. If I had taken the extra time to create an overlapped joint without any gaps on it thicker than the welding wire I was working with prior to doing any of the welding, then this would have taken a lot less time and effort to clean up. But since I've basically butt welded everything and skipped that preparation time up front, this is how I get to deal with it on the back end. I've got these stupid gaps in the rear carrier bearing mounts to take care of still. I need to plug those up, not for structural reasons, but to make it easier to seal and keep moisture out. There's the other one. Stupid hole. I found some more stupid holes even after the second pass of welding and grinding. Yeah, it's nice when you get things right the first time, sure. Once in a while I get to do that. Today isn't looking like my day. Third time's the charm. So I've just got a tiny bit of cleanup left and to find some scrap metal laying around the shop to plug up the back of the carrier bearing with. I didn't have a plan for this and the cut was uneven, so I cut two pieces of 16th inch angle iron and trimmed them to fit across most of the top. I'm not going to lie, I just shoved two pieces of scrap steel into what remains and covered them with welds. I didn't feel like cutting anything at this point, and it's not structural. Some of you might criticize me about adding weight, but trust me, this is not where the trap speeds come from. I did remove some of that weight. All of the rough and flat welds were removed using a ball-shaped half-inch double-cut burr. This turned out to be the most useful tool in the project. It didn't take long to make the edges rounded and everything easy to seal. Speaking of seal, this stuff needs to be pressed into the seams to fill the gaps. It's messy, so you better double glove, trust me. Working above it, I could be careful with the amount applied and figure out how far this stuff goes. On the bottom, space limited my ability to work like this, so I cut the nozzle applied sealer directly to the seams and pressed it around with a spreader. Normally you'd press this only into your seams, or apply it between parts that will be spot welded. But because there are so many pieces, welds, and spot weld holes patched, and because I have a bit more sealer than I needed, I figured I was best off coating every square inch of both sides of the parts I replaced. I pushed it into the grooves and the gaps between these parts. That will keep my work dry.
So now it's 4 days later since I spread the seam sealer. And the stuff's finally dry. I've kept the place at an even temperature, or at least tried to. Tending to this thing to keep it around 70 to 80 degrees in here.
The top side will be covered by carpet, and only squirrels and cats will get to see the bottom. They don't care how pretty it looks, they told me. But this is going to clean up nicely in the end, and it won't rust. This stuff dries hard as a rock with a satin finish. It's dry to the touch in a little less than a day, but the thicker spots can take several days to lose their squishiness. Even though it's dry, it's still flexible, so cracking won't ever be an issue. And now that it's dry, I can paint it. My primer is safe on plastics. Good, because I want this to stick. This will fill in all the bare spots where I was working and give the top coat of paint something to stick to.
I have a few holes that I don't want to get paint in for the seats and the e-brake. And I've got a little solution for this. Earplugs. You get hundreds of them for $5. Anyway, you just take the earplugs, you stick them in the bolt holes, and they swivel to fit.
Wait, I don't need to get ahead of myself here. I meant to mask off all the studs on the carrier bearing mounts first. I don't want to have to clean any paint off of those.
It is hot in here. So yeah, I picked up some yellow spray paint. Went up to the auto parts store with a piece of the Colt. Everybody says this thing looks like an alligator head. I don't get it. It matches anywhere where I have clear coat. Doesn't match where I don't have clear coat, so it doesn't match this whole back panel. And it's a completely different shade of yellow than the bumper. I don't know what that looks like on camera, how good yellow does. I matched it to the interior piece, and it looks like it goes pretty well with this. I think this is the same stuff I used on the wheel wells in the back, and they turned out pretty good. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and coat this down on the top and the bottom side because I don't want primer to be the only protectant. Primer will absorb water, so I want to seal coat it.
It's the finishing stretch. I just need to get everything clean where I'm working and mask off what I don't want painted. I could easily break some of the clips that hold the wiring harness on if I try to remove it. It's held in by 20-year-old plastic zip clips, so I'm going to mask it instead. If you hate the time spent struggling to peel painted tape off of wiring harnesses as much as I do, try using aluminum foil instead. It's very easy to remove once the paint dries and clings to parts with just a squeeze. I decided to paint the whole seat section of the floor pan. There's loose grit in some of the detents, and I missed a spot where I blistered the paint welding stuff to the underside of the car. So I'm giving it all a finishing pass with a wire brush, nylon brush, and compressed air.
So the paint's dry now. Good times. That looks fantastic. I'm going to take all this aluminum foil off, and I'm going to spray some rubberized undercoating on the underside of the car. I've run completely out of kerosene, so I've got to do it while I still have some warmth in here. The kerosene store's closed. I snaked some transfer case bolts off the GSX. It was mean of me.
There's all the room in the world for a 3-inch exhaust. I've taken a drive shaft, a tunnel, carrier bearings, and an emergency brake that did not fit and made them fit the way they needed to. This chassis has officially become a Colt GSX, and this is a chapter I'm happy to close. Now that all the go parts are connected, in 2013 we teach it how to run and stop, and get somewhere to sit. Happy New Year, tubes.